So leasing versus financing electric cars. So right now, electric cars especially, the technology is changing very fast, right? Today we get 300 miles per charge. Who knows what it's going to be down the road, right? Tomorrow it could be 1,000 miles, and the cars that only got 300 aren't going to be worth as much as the cars that get 1,000, right? So we all have to agree that cars are not a good investment, right? We've already talked about that. But some of the things that do go down, the reason they go down is because, again, after the warranty runs out, then you're responsible for the repairs, right? And on electric cars, your repairs can be more sometimes with the different things. So less reliable with age. The new models, technology will change that value of the cars previously if you got new, better technology on the new ones. So looking at the difference between financing and leasing, really, when you think about it one way, if you finance it, the bank has the title. If you lease it, the bank has the title. Really not a big difference there. But you do have some ownership. If you buy it, you own it, no matter what, right? If you lease it, at the end of the lease, you're going to have to make some choices, and we'll get to that in just a little bit at the end of the lease. Typically up front, you have lower down payments when you lease, higher down payments when you buy. Your monthly payments are lower on a lease and higher on a buy, right? And I'll get into the math toward the end. So some of the other things, early termination, right? If you buy a car today and finance it for 60, 72 months and want to get out of it in 2 years, you're probably going to have negative equity. So it's the same thing on a lease. You can get out of a lease anytime. You just have to pay off the balance just like you would if you bought it. Does that make sense? If you buy a car, you can drive as many miles as you want. You pay for it in the resale value of the car going down. If you lease it, there's a limit of how many miles you can drive, right? But you can drive more, you just have to pay for it. So the neat thing is that they cap the amount of miles that you can drive, and we can set that up based on your individual needs, but it's controllable. Customizing your car. If you like to customize your car, leasing might not be good for you because if you turn it in at the end, you have to uncustomize it, put it back to normal, right? Okay, so depreciation, right? What happens when you drive a car off the lot? Go down in value? Pretty much right off the showroom floor, right? It goes from new to used. There's rebates can affect that future value, that kind of thing. So the nice thing about a lease, what they do is they'll go out 2 or 3 years and say, okay, here's the value of the car. We're going to fix the value of the car at 3 years, whatever that value is. Does that make sense? And if the bank guarantees it, if it's worth more, you get to keep it. If it's worth less, you don't have to keep it. Make sense? So, lease and value. What can affect the value of the car at the end of a lease? At the end of 3 years of any car, whether you buy or lease it, doesn't make a difference, right? So some of the things that can make a difference, how many miles are on it, right? So we predict the value of a car based on the number of miles you say you're going to drive it. The second thing is the condition. If you take really good care of your car, it's probably going to be worth more. If you don't take care, it's going to be worth less. On a lease, they describe exactly what condition it should be in and what's normal wear and tear and what's not normal wear and tear. So again, it's a level playing field. Does that make sense? Accident history. If you buy a car today and it has a $8,000 accident and they fix it, you have 2 cars exactly the same. One had $8,000 worth of damage. Is it worth less in 3 years from now? Probably yes, right? So if that's the case, if you own the car, you've taken the loss. If you lease the car, you can just drop it off at the end and walk away from it as long as it's fixed. Does that make sense? So some of the protections you get there at the lease end. Now, what are you paying for when you lease a car? You're paying for depreciation. What it's worth today to what it's worth in 3 years from now, right? So what are the things that can affect what you pay? Is how much of that you're going to have to pay. The big thing is the rebates. $7,500 comes right off the top. In our case, they're more in some of them. I have cars I'm almost out of them now, but we had cars that had up to a $19,000 rebate on them. So that comes right off the top. The other thing is if you push cash down. If you put cash down on a lease, it drastically makes your payment lower because you're not financing as much. It's a smaller number. It makes a bigger difference. I don't recommend putting cash down on leases, personally. And the reason why is because it's depreciation. Less money you put into it, the better off you're going to be. Does that make sense? So, but you can do it either way. You don't have to put money down on a lease, but you can. It's your option. So, the other thing that's going to affect the price, my profit as a dealer. If I lower that, that makes it cheaper for you. Does that make sense? So those are things that are going to affect that. You're only paying for the net difference of after all the rebates, the discounts, cash down, whatever you're financing, between that and what that's going to be worth in 3 years is what you're paying for. Okay? At the end of 3 years, you're going to have 3 choices. If the car's worth more, you can buy it. It's a good buy. Does that make sense? So the difference between where the dollar sign is down to the end of the red line, that's equity, right? If the car has equity, you can capture that equity what you need for. Number one, it's a good buy. If you wanted to buy it and keep it, you're buying the car and it's a good value, right? If you wanted to turn it in and trade it in, you could capture that equity and use it for down payment on the next car or take it back in cash. I've done both. Okay? But let's say it's not worth what they say it's going to be worth at the end of the lease. Let's say it's worth less. Okay? And to give you an example, our Nero right now that we have, they're coming in, I'm getting 3-year-old used ones coming in right now, and people are dropping them off at the end of the lease because what they have to buy it for is like $24,000, and they're not worth that much. So the bank's going to take the difference, the hit between what the $24,000 is to what I can buy, what they sell them for at the auction to me. And you don't have to take that hit. So your option when you have less no equity, you wouldn't want to pay the negative equity to trade it in. That doesn't make any sense. So you drop it off. Here's the keys. Thanks a lot. It's been fun, but I'm done. I want that color now. Does that make sense? So when you drop it off, what are some of the hiccups people have? If I say I'm going to put 30,000 miles on a car over the next 3 years, and I put 40,000 on it, it's not worth as much, and you're going to have to pay the difference in the miles. But we tell you right up front what that's going to be. So in this case, it's 20 cents a mile for anything over 30 to whatever you put on it, it's 20 cents a mile. And you'd pay for that if you turned it back in. Does that make sense? Normal wear and tear. And a good example of normal wear and tear is if you put a scratch in a car and it's bigger than a business card, it's not normal wear and tear. So you have an insurance company to fix that for you, or they have what they call lease care, which could cover up to $7,500 of that if you wanted to. So what are things to watch out for? If you put high miles on a car, set your lease up for the high miles. My mom was a great example of that. She sold remodeling all over Portland. 25,000 miles a year in, year out. So I put her on a 2-year lease. She put 25,000 miles a year. At the end of 2 years, I had 50,000 miles on it. She dropped off the keys. I want that color now, and she got another car. Fixed her costs, though, right? Because if you finance that car for 72 months, how many miles is the car going to have on it after 72 months, right? It's going to be a lot of miles. So fix that. So just know what you're going to do. If it changes, if you say, hey, I'm only going to do 10,000 miles, you get a new job, now you're driving to Woodland, right? You're putting a lot of miles on the car. Now you know you got to start saving up ahead of time for that if you're going to turn it back in. Does that make sense? It's fixed. How you take care of the car. Again, for $7,500, it's not very much. It's probably $10, $15 a month. You can cover the car up to $7,500 worth of damage. And so if somebody keyed the side of the car, you could just turn it in. They'll take it out of that. Okay? There is some fees. The banks, hey, they still make their money, right? They charge a $650 acquisition fee. That means that when they start the lease up, it's figured into it. And I'll go through the math here in just a second. A disposal fee. So if you drop it off, they charge $350 to process the car. So just know that's coming to it. And then if you purchase the car, it's $450 to purchase it at the end. That's the fee they use to set up to take care of doing all the paperwork for you and all that kind of stuff. Okay? There is some dealer fees if a dealer wanted to. I personally don't do it, but Ford is a good example of that. Ford dealers have been doing it for years. They can add another $500 fee for them, type of thing. So little things to watch out for on the lease there. So here's how a lease works. We're going to do the math. Okay? So MSRP. Everybody knows what MSRP is, right? It's a standard, right? So in this, we're doing a 25 Kia Niro. The residual is what the car's worth at the end of the lease, and they figure it's going to be worth 63% of the MSRP. In this case, it's $27,275, right? So that's the difference between the 43 and the 27 is what you're paying for, right? So if we're going to sell it to you for 41, so that's $2,000 in dealer discount. You have the acquisition fee on top of that, and then you're going to have rebates. We have rebates of $9,500, and I have a $2,000 down payment. And I'll get to why that's only $1,800 in just a second. Okay? So the next option, we figured the residual. The net cap cost is what your rebates less what you're paying for. So we had the 41 plus the 650 minus the 95 minus 1810. So you're financing $30,624. Does that make sense? Your residual is 27, so you're not paying for much. Upfront charges, the $2,000 down payment on all leases, you have to make your first payment. That's the only thing you have to do. Everything else is just making you feel, adjusting the payment make you feel better, right? So in this case, we're going to use $2,000. We're going to deduct the first payment out of it of $189.15 and plus the rebate. So your total down is $11,310. Okay? So now we know what the selling price is. We know what the cap reduction, which is down payment. Your net cap cost is $30,634 less the residual. That's what you're going to buy it for at the end of this one's a 2-year lease. At the end of 2 years, you're going to buy it for 27. You have the option to buy it for 27. Okay? So your total balance is $3,358. Divide that by 24 months, it's $139. This is where the interest comes in. The lease charge, money factor, it's $49.22 a month. So $189.15 is your total payment. Does that make sense? So total depreciation on this, after all the rebates and that kind of stuff, is $3,058.30. So what's it going to cost you to drive it for 2 years? You have your $2,000 down payment, which includes the first payment, and you have 23 more payments. Your total out of pocket is $63.50 for the next 2 years to drive an electric car. You won't have gas, there's really no maintenance, and you're under warranty the whole time. So what happens if let's compare it to financing now. So this is all the numbers in one. So financing the same car, we have a selling price of $41,200, $2,000 down payment again. The rebate changes because you're not leasing, you're financing. It goes down to $7,500. At 5.5%, for 72 months, your payment's $520 a month. Now you own it at the end. Different rebate. So 72 months at $520 a month is $37,000 plus your down payment. You're totally in the car $39,000 with no option. At the end of 2 years or 3 years, you don't like it, you got to trade it in, and hopefully you have equity. Does that make sense? So if you lease it, again, we're back to the $63.50 as far as your total out of pocket. But now you got to pay for the car to compare it equal, right? You got to pay the 27. So you're 27. Now you'd write a check for $27,000. Your total cost then is $33 versus the $39. Your $5,800 difference. Now not all of us can write a check for $27,000. So let's finance it. Let's see what that comes out to be. So if you finance the 27 for 48 months, so you have a total of 72 months, 2 years on the lease, 4 years on the buy, your payment would be $589. Your total cost would be $36,800. You're still saving $2,600 by leasing it and taking the option on buying it, if it's worth 27. I don't think it will be. There's too many things that can affect the value of the car. That's too risky. Electric cars especially, because the technology is changing all the time. If you're a cash buyer, because you don't like to make payments, we can help you with that. So what they do is what they call a one-pay lease. And basically what would happen in this instance, you would write me a check for $63.50 and drive the car for 2 years and have the option on the 27 at the end of 2 years. And so you would write 2 checks instead of 1, but you wouldn't have to. You don't have to buy the 27. If it's not a good buy, I would strongly recommend not to do it. Does that make sense? So again, treating a car, it's not an investment, you guys. It's something we all need, but put as little money into it as possible. Get the best part of the car's life. Keeping a car for 10 or if you're a person that keeps a car for 10 or 12 years, okay, this might not be the right way for you to do it, but technology is changing so fast, you probably want to keep changing. So, any questions?
Is the residual negotiable?
No.
So, the bank guarantees it. They set the residual. What makes it change is miles. If you say, hey, I'm going to put 20,000 miles in, it's going to lower the residual and you're going to pay more. Does that make sense?
Sure. So what, for the dealership, I mean, a lot of your incentives to sell it is when you get back into the finance department and you start talking about loans and money factors and stuff like that.
Yeah. We make less money on a lease.
So, but your incentive though is inventory turnover?
I guess I'm looking at it in the long run. And I'm kind of greedy.
A repeat customer?
Yeah.
So I don't want one car. I want them all. I want the next one in 3 years and the next one, because to have you come back in 3 years, I have a really good chance I'm going to sell you another car. Because when you look at buying another one, you say, well, I can buy this next one or I could lease it, right? I look at it this way. For my personal self, I want the nicest car I can drive for the cheapest payment. I don't want to own it. I'm going to pay a car payment for the rest of my life. And I want to put as little money into a car as possible. As a dealer, I make less money leasing you a car than I do if I finance it. But I'm in it for the long run. Yeah.
You said no cash down. You don't. So if we have a trade-in, another electric vehicle, say on a lease.
Yep.
So what can we expect depending on the condition of the car, the mileage, whatever?
I wish I could tell you what your car was worth off the top of my head, but I'm not that good. No, but so if you have a trade-in, right? So if you have equity in it, it's just like having a down payment. And you can take it in cash, or you could take it as equity down and lower your payments on your next car. So either way there. Now, if you have negative equity, it's harder to do on a lease because the short term, if you add, say, your $5,000 upside down, that $5,000 has a greater effect on your payment over a shorter time than it would over 72 months or something like that. But the rebates help eat that up, though, too.
Okay.
Yes.
I have two questions. So the first one is the lease charge that you mentioned. Is that the same as the interest that I pay for the lease?
Basically, so the acquisition cost is what the leasing company's charging up front to set up the lease. And the money factor, which was the $49 on one of the things.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
right there. So I understand that you divide it by 24 months to get to the 139.
Right.
What is the lease charge here?
So they use what they call a money factor.
And I wish I was really good at math. I could tell you how it's done, but it's basically, it's a conversion of the interest rate. They're still making some money, right? But the manufacturer, key is who we're financing it through, and they're incentivizing these leases because they want to see you in a lease too. They see the long term too. They want to see you keep the cycle going, right? And so it's a really cheap money factor and a cheap interest rate per se.
Yeah, I was just wondering because when I see these advertisements out there that says, hey, lease for $199, lease for $399.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, so the only thing that I don't have in here is because I don't know where you live. So there's taxes, licenses, and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay, and then my second question, when we go move forward to the other slides, when you compare the lease math to the finance math, why do you choose 72 months and not 24 months to compare to the lease?
Well, because your payment would be so high that it wouldn't be realistic for people to do. Does that make sense? I mean, if I was going to buy it, I'd want a payment that's somewhat realistic. If I was going to finance a $40,000 car for 24 months, my payment would be $1,800 a month roughly.
Okay, and to get as close as possible to the residual of 27,000, basically.
Basically, I was trying to see, I just started playing with numbers and I put it out there. I mean, I could have done it for 60 and shown a higher payment, but I was trying to show a realistic payment that we would all say we would go do. But to buy a $40,000 car for $150 or $180, it's a pretty good deal. Yes, sir.
So in a lease, they use the money factor, they use a money factor,
Yes.
which is money factor times 2,400 equals interest rate. Is that negotiable?
The
money
we
factor.
can mark it up
So sometimes it is. And I can't mark it up very much. I mean, I can add about $5 a month to this payment. So it's not a big deal. It's not, it doesn't make that big a difference to me because there's not enough money in it. But so the price, the money factor can be, some of them I can't do. I can't mark them up at all. So it just depends on the car and how the program's set up and that kind of stuff. Yep.
And most of these returns at least EVs, they go to auction, or do you have any CPOs?
Yeah, no, I buy them all the time.
Do you?
Yeah. I buy probably 10 a month.
Are those negative equity off the lease, or are some of them positive equity off the lease?
None of them are positive. So to give you an idea.
So you buy them for the return value, and then you mark them up?
No, so the return value on the used ones, 22s right now, to kind of give you a little insight, the residual on those cars is about 24 grand, between 24 and 25. And I can buy them for close to 20 right now, so about 4 grand back. The bank's losing like $4,000 on them right now from 3 years ago, when they sold them 3 years ago to what they're turning them in at the end now. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, yes, sir.
Why does the money factor even exist? Like, why not just use interest rate? Yeah.
Well, it's because when you finance a car, it's on, I'm on over time here. When you finance a car, it's on the remaining balance, right? And every month the balance goes down and that kind of stuff. And this is a fixed cost. On a money factor, they're charging you basically this much total for having the lease for the 2 years. And they just divide it by 20 months or 36 months and say, here it is. So it's not based on the balance that you owe, it's based on the balance you started at, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I don't know how bankers came up with all this, how they came up with the math. I don't know, but it's
So it's a banking factor. Money factor is a banking creation. It's not a car dealer.
Right, not a car dealer thing, no. So, yeah.
What are the leasing options? Through a dealership, through a bank, through any other kind of institution?
There is a few banks that
Is the time variable?
yes.
24, 36?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go 24, 36, 48 is usually the longest. I've seen some longer ones, but I wouldn't recommend doing too much longer than that because then you're going to be out of warranty and you don't really want to do that. So there is banks that do leasing out there, but typically you want to lease it through the manufacturer because they're incentivizing it. So, yeah.
Obviously, it's cheaper up front to opt for more mileage than to pay for it on the back end, or the back end, or the front end, back end of the lease.
Yep.
But what's the difference?
Typically, it's about 15 cents a mile if you add the miles to it up front. But the problem is, if I say I figured this lease and I'm going to drive 20,000 miles instead of 10, I figure it into the lease and my payment goes up, whatever, say $100 a month, I don't get that money back if I put lower miles on it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you've got to really know how much you're going to do and then do a little under that.
It's better to opt for less mileage and pay for it on the back end.
On the back end, because you only pay for it if you turn the car in.
Right.
Does that make sense? So if you trade it in, you have equity, great. Now, if you put more miles on it, you probably won't have equity, but it's still there. The other thing is that if you say you get in an accident and they total the car out, that's why you don't want to put big down payments on a lease because you don't get it back. So again, let me put it this way. How many everybody have PGE here for electric, right? Would you call the electric company up and say, hey, I know I'm going to need electricity for the next 3 years. If I put $2,000 down, would I get a lower monthly payment? You wouldn't do that. It doesn't make sense. So think of it that way. You have to buy electricity, you have to drive a car. So you're just trying to put as little money into it as possible. So any other questions? I'm running out of time, so I can be out in the hallway if you have more. Thank you.